Hi everybody, Andrew Cuneo here. Today I'm going to be doing a deck tech for this white-red aggressive deck in Standard with Streets of New Capenna cards. The metagame for Streets of New Capenna Standard is starting to get pretty well defined. It seems like the top deck is sort of a Esper mid-range deck but built around Raffine. And I wanted to see if you could attack that by trying to play a more aggressive strategy that would kind of try to go underneath of it. Aggressive strategies are in a somewhat of a rough spot in Standard now. There's not a lot of great 1 and 2 drops. And really, there's not a lot of great removal spells. I mean, the removal in Standard looks like it might be good on paper, but the reality is that there aren't a lot of removal spells that you can play that are going to consistently give you an advantage when you're casting them against your opponent's 3 and 4 mana plays. You're almost always going to be either, down a card, or they will have gotten some value from using the removal spell, or from their permanent before you could use the removal spell, or it's also just very hard to pick a removal spell that's going to work against everything. And that makes it very hard to continue to push through damage with your cheap creatures. You need some way to get the blockers out of the way so that your 1 and 2 drops can continue to do damage, because they're generally going to be outclassed if their 3 and 4 mana permanents just kind of sit and play unopposed. This deck, I'm trying to see if there's a way to push through that. This deck was not exactly my idea. I played against somebody who was playing on the ladder, and they had a list that is very similar to this. I didn't have their exact deck list, but I'm trying basically the same ideas as what they had. And there's a couple of things that appealed to me about this approach. One is that so you get to play with Voltage Surge, which 4 damage for 1 mana at instant speed I think is about as good as you're going to do in a removal spell, and obviously that's going to require you to play a lot of artifacts in your deck to be able to sack, and preferably ones that you don't really mind sacking. And as we go through this deck, we'll see there's a lot of artifacts that are fine to sack, or treasures that are fine to sack. And also, you're just going to hopefully have enough cards that you can afford to 2-from-1 yourself occasionally. So this is going to be very much an artifact synergies deck. And the other thing that's really appealing about this deck is these two 2-drops, the Ingenious Smith and the Patchwork Automaton, because they can grow relatively quickly so that they can continue to be relevant even against your opponent's 3 and 4 mana plays. The Smith gives you some additional card advantage. Hopefully, the deck's mostly artifacts. The Automaton doesn't give you any card advantage, but the ward ability makes it a little bit harder to deal with, and it can also just grow more quickly because it triggers off of every artifact, not just the first artifact. So those are pretty appealing. Looking at the rest of the 1-drops, we've got Iron Apprentice, which is obviously a pretty weak card, but it works if you sack it to Voltage Surge. There's going to be some additional ways to get counters on it as we get later on into the deck. Also, it's just, you can consistently cast it. So there's some appeal to this card for sure. Only 2 copies of Rabbit Battery. This card I thought was going to be very strong when it was originally previewed, but it's kind of disappointed. It's really only making my deck because I wanted some more cheap 1-drops, and it's an artifact creature. Goldhound, it's a new card. So 1/1 First Strike Menace is not ideal, but it's also a treasure that is a summoning sick treasure, unfortunately. But this is, just another trying to get on the board quickly, deal a little bit of damage, and then, you'll find a use for it later on in the game, hopefully. 1 Portable Hole. Portable Hole is another excellent removal spell, and the fact that it's an artifact matters a lot, obviously, in this deck, because this deck's all about artifact synergies. 1 copy of Ogre-Head Helm. Just, for another 2-drop, maybe a little bit of a way to get some card advantage in the middle of the game. The 3-drops, I think, is where it kind of gets a little bit more exciting. We've got Fable the Mirror Breaker, which is not an obvious card in an artifact synergies-based deck, but remember that the goblin you get from Chapter 1 is going to make a treasure token when it attacks, so that is a way to get an artifact, which, you can feed that to your Voltage Surge. You can use it to trigger your Automaton or your Smith for the turn. And this is obviously just one of the best 3-mana cards in Standard. Then I've split the other 3-drops between Maul the Skyclaves, which is obviously, it's been around for a while. It's solid, but I wouldn't say it's amazing. And then this new card, Getaway Car, which is a card it looks like a pretty good card to me. It hasn't found a home yet. I'm hoping this is going to be the home for it. So 3 mana for a 4/3 haste vehicle with crew 1, and it has, whenever it attacks or blocks, you have to return one of the creatures that crewed it to your hand. So you can return either the 1-drops that aren't going to be that painful to recast, or if you want to have a little bit of a value engine, you can return the Ingenious Smith so that you can get the card advantage trigger off of the Smith again. Also, just 4/3 haste for 3 mana. It hits really hard. I'm hoping this is going to be an important card for this deck. And then the one card that kind of makes it make sense to have filled the deck with so many low-impact 1-mana cards, Showdown of the Skalds. This card is obviously just great. It's just really a question of, is this deck a good home for it? And really, this deck, in order for this to be a top-tier deck, this has to be a better deck than Runes in at least some situations. I'm not sure that's going to be the case, but that's what I'm going to play today and try to find out. And also, when I said Iron Apprentice has some extra synergies, obviously you can move the counters onto the Apprentice, and then when the Apprentice dies, it will, instead of just shifting one counter onto something, it will shift all of its counters. So any counters you pick up from Showdown and the Skalds, you're going to kind of they're going to survive through the Iron Apprentice. We're filling out the lands with usual suspects, some creature lands, some spell lands, the good dual lands, 2 Shatterskull Smashings. I felt the deck was maybe a little bit light on removal without them, and also you're certainly not going to be taking a ton of advantage of like your 5th or 6th land in this deck. So this is a way to potentially, if you've drawn a bunch of lands, this is a way to spend the mana. So that's the main appeal of that. Also, I just think this is a great card. Looking at the sideboard, this is very much a version 1 of a sideboard. So it's really just a bunch of cards that I want to see if they make sense to sideboard in as I play against various matchups. Portable Holes, these are mostly intended to be against Runes. There's not a whole lot of other decks that are really just chock full of 1 and 2 mana permanents. The reason I have so many, though, is just because it's such a perfect card for this deck. Like, having your Ingenious Smith be able to dig up a good removal spell is such a big deal. So I wanted to have access to the full 4 if I actually get to play a matchup where it's going to be a good card. 1 Pithing Needle, this is another anti-planeswalker card. I probably wouldn't be that excited about it except for the fact that this is an artifact synergies kind of deck. So I think Pithing Needle makes a lot of sense to try there. Burning Hands, obviously, against a green deck with Werewolf Pack Leader, Old Growth Trolls, something like that. 1 Elspeth. This could maybe be the Wandering Emperor. I just wanted to try another Planeswalker so that if I'm playing against somebody who's very like sweeper heavy, especially with cards like Farewell, I would have a way to kind of fight through that. Notably, Getaway Car does dodge. Well, no, it does not dodge Farewell. Never mind. It dodges Shadow's Verdict. It dodges Meathook Massacre. It dodges some sweepers, but not Farewell. Same thing with Maul the Skyclaves, where it's going to be a permanent that lasts through the sweepers that don't get rid of artifacts. Some copies of Circle of Confinement. This is, more value against Runes. You could also board it in against Rafine. Divine Smite is specifically against Rafine. It can hit Kaito, it can hit Obnixilis, it can hit Lolth. 1 Rip Apart. This would be a card that, it's just generally good removal. It can get rid of a wedding announcement. 2 copies of Unlicensed Hearse. This is probably the most narrow card that I'm trying in the sideboard. This is mainly going to be a card that you're going to want to bring in if you play against the Reanimator deck that's trying to invoke Justice, a Velomachus. And then 1 Volatile Arsonist, which this card really made the sideboard just because I think it's so good against Lolth. But it's just a way to give the deck a little bit more top-end power if you want to, try to play for a slightly longer game. Usually when you sideboard in Standard, if you're an aggressive deck, you want to be able to board into a slightly higher curve to become a more mid-range deck, potentially. And this is just a good way to do that. So that's the deck. I'm going to run it through an event, so let's see how it goes. All right, no white mana, but I've got a 1 mana play, I've got a 3 mana play, I've got a removal spell. And the Fable of the Mirror Breaker should fix my mana. Cool, I'm up against what's probably the Esper Rafine deck, which I think is a strong candidate for the best deck in the format. Hopefully they play a Tenacious Underdog here. Well, it's not a Tenacious Underdog, it's actually an even juicier target for this Voltage Surge. So that's nice. Summon a line card. So, if I want to, I can Voltage Surge the Trespasser and play the Showdown this turn, which I think is what I'm going to do. It was a very big investment, but I get to continue to be ahead, which I think is a pretty big deal. Wow, that's a really, really strong Showdown. I can literally just play them all. Kaito Shizuki. I've said that I think that the Esper deck is probably the best deck several times. I do not actually think Kaito Shizuki is a very good card. It continues to kind of amaze me that people put it in the deck. So what do I want? How do I want these counters to go? Probably want one extra one on the Rabbit Battery and I guess I'm going to go one on the Rabbit Battery, one on this thing, one on this thing. Even Mythic Massacre wouldn't be that scary. I would still be left with a 6/6.
Now this is a juicy secret.
Okay. I think I'm fine with those. What do I want to do here? I think I'm going to go Patchwork Automaton. I think they're probably dead. If I just distribute the counters so that they can't... I guess it doesn't even really matter how I distribute the counters because we're going to accrue this, copy it, oh wait, it's not crewed. That wasn't good. Yeah. Doesn't matter, but wasn't ideal. Still 10 damage, but for some reason I blanked on the fact that it wasn't going to come into play as a crewed vehicle. All right, so I got the matchup I'm kind of expecting, but how do I want to use my sideboard? I think I want these Divine Smites for sure. Not wild about Portable Hole. Do I want a Circle of Confinement? Maybe. Maybe I can take out the Rabbit Battery. The card seems kind of weak. The one card that they have that dodges the Divine Smites, it's a little bit of a problem, is Luminarch Aspirant. I think I'm going to go with this for now. I do have the surges that hit the Aspirant. Also, the Circle of Confinement can hit it. I wonder if Divine Smite isn't just worse than Circle of Confinement. This can hit Kaido, it can hit Lolth, Sorin. So it does do some other things. Let's just go with this. Also, Divine Smite has the benefit that it can't be hit by Vanishing Verse. This is a good hand if you like Iron Apprentice. If you're dodgy on the Iron Apprentice, you're not going to like this as a starting hand. I think I'm going to cast them all. There might be some argument for holding some of them to just discard them. Well, alright. I'm going to discard one of them now to the Fable of the Mirror Breaker for sure. So if I wanted to, I could kill the Rafine and kill the Aspirant, but it cost me my Goldhound. Question is, if I play the Fable of the Mirror Breaker this turn, do things get out of hand? I mean, if they make the Aspirant bigger, it's pretty bad for me, right? So I think I'm going to just do it this turn. I could have also split the difference and gone Fable of the Mirror Breaker plus the Voltage Surge. That does give them one chance to attack with the Rafine, and maybe they do, you know, maybe it fixes their hand in some way. It wouldn't be desirable for me. I think I want to get this thing going before I start hitting them with the Getaway Car. It's the Mirthless. No mirth here. No mirth at all.
You would serve me well.
Just Divine Smite the Sorin. Could also Divine Smite the Vampire and just Alpha. I think I like that a little bit better. I'm going to lose my Goblin token probably, but I get rid of the 2/3 lifelinker. And I don't give them another activation of the Sorin, which obviously if I'm playing the Divine Smite, there's no way they're going to get to activate the Sorin next turn. I'm going to play it in some way that prevents that. Getaway Car, you keep on not being the best option. I want to try you, but the other spells in my deck are too good, it seems. I'm going to play this turn. I think I'm going to wait a turn. This is flipped now. It's also a really obvious turn for them to have the Wandering Emperor. Let's just play the Patchwork Automaton. Hope not to get Meathook massacred. Probably no attack with the Iron Apprentices this turn. Just doesn't seem worth it. Okay. They could have used that to kill the reflection of Kiki-Jiki, but they didn't. I find that kind of odd. I see. The reflection of Kiki-Jiki was never going to live. This was a little bit too much of a good thing. Still gonna have an incredibly strong next turn, but I'm gonna have to let some of these great cards go, sadly. Should I just play a double Fable of the Mirror Breaker? Problem with playing the Showdown of the Skalds is that I only get to play one spell this turn, which isn't good enough. I would have been tempted to cast the Maul, the Skyclaves, but I drew another one, so it doesn't feel that necessary to do that. Alright. So I think I'm going to start hitting them with one goblin. And we'll start working on our backup Fable of the Mirror Breaker. So is it okay to leave them with two Graveyard Gluttons? I think it'll be fine.
I hope you're ready to lose.
How many creatures are in the yard? I have none. They have none. They're about to have one. Probably they're going to exile this other Iron Apprentice, I would assume. Ooh. Okay. We'll just move this Maul over to a different Goblin token. There is another synergy with the Iron Apprentice that you can Reflection of Kiki Jiki it, and you know, you get a 1/1 that gives you a +1/+1 counter when it dies. I believe that's how that works. You may see me attempt it. Maybe not, though. This seems like it's going to be hard for them to loop through the next time.
You are not much of a roadblock.
What if I just go all out Alpha Strike? This is a creature, so let's say they're going to 7. They eat one of these, maybe chump that. Take 4 from this. 3, 2, 2. I think I can safely Alpha Strike. I think if they have a spell, they don't die, but I don't think it can go that. I don't think it'll go that bad for me, even if they have a spell. We're on the scoreboard. That actually felt pretty impressive. Like, I had really strong draws both games, and that I had Showdown right when I needed it. But that's the payoff for playing Fable of the Mirror Breaker and Showdown together. You're just going to consistently be able to do that in a lot of games. Somewhat awkward mana start if I don't draw a third land. The Showdown, the Sundown Pass was threatening to come into play tapped. No longer an issue because I drew Eiganjo. A little bit slower to start here. Might need to find a portable hole pretty bad, because this is going to be somewhat hard to contain pretty soon. Next turn, this thing's going to start getting pretty strong. I think I'm going to attack and then probably play Ingenious Smith Getaway Car. We've got the Goldhounds going on. Wait, this is only when you cast, so the Goblin Shaman does not actually trigger it. I was confused about that interaction. This one's enter the battlefield, that's why I was confused. It's a mix, it's a mishmash. I think I would double block this if they were to attack. Should I just go crazy and swing in with Patchwork Automaton this turn? Probably. Should this attack, though? What card is this likely to be? It could be Doomscar, it could be Starnheim Unleashed. Does this have Summoning Sickness? No. So I can play the Voltage Surge right now if I want to. I think I'm going to attack with only the Patchwork Automaton, though. It's a cat car. I think it's a little bit too expensive for me in terms of resources to Voltage Surge this Welcoming Vampire. I think I need to just kind of play to the board. This 5/5 blocker is really annoying. Sorry about the noise. I picked the wrong time of day, evidently, to do this video. Another Ingenious Smith, or the same one. On something good. Nothing. Nothing was really low on my list of something good. It's defined. It was a Starnheim Unleashed. Yikes. It's gonna be probably all she wrote. Don't really foresee myself being able to attack through all of this stuff. This whole thing, basically, it all fell apart when they had a turn 2 Luminarch Aspirant on the play that I never killed. It didn't help that my first 2 plays both got Skyclave apparitioned by apparitions that, you know, never came off the board. So against this deck, is Rip Apart a good card? It can kill Chariot. It can kill Luminarch Aspirant. They probably have Wedding Announcement in their deck. That could be nice. I think, again, I'm just going to take Rabbit Battery out of my deck. I think it's just the weakest card. I don't really have anything that's insane against tokens, huh? I could have Burning Hands, which is good against the Chariot. It's okay against the Aspirant. I don't know that it's that good in general. I think maybe what I want is Pithing Needle. Just because it's good against Chariot. They also probably have the Wandering Emperor in their deck. I mean, they almost definitely do. Let's try it like that. This hand, I think, is a little bit too weak to keep. Alright, this hand is certainly more appealing. I think I'm going to ditch the Automaton, probably. I have a redundant 2-drop. Obviously, I can't cast Voltage Surge, but I also don't think I'm going to win the game if I just never see a red mana. So I'm keeping it under the assumption that I'm going to draw a red mana, because if I don't, I think I'm just going to lose. Hopefully next turn is going to have that red mana I was looking for. Red mana. So if I get to go Smith Voltage Surge that, I'll be very happy. I am very happy. Guess I should play this. This card just... It's so good, and it rewards you so heavily for getting it into play quickly. It's a little bit awkward, just in terms of how good it is. I'll probably just be ditching the 2 spells I found, because they're not really anything to get too excited about. So I'm going to rip apart this chariot. Brought to you by the treasure I'm going to get from this goblin attacking. You're not going to attack. The Wandering Emperor. Kind of knew that one was coming. At least we kind of knew it was coming from the deck. If I want to, I can move this Maul and kill the Wandering Emperor. I think I'm okay with them having a 1 loyalty Wandering Emperor for a turn. So I can get this going. That was a really, really sad assortment of cards.
New moves to teach you.
No blocks. Do 1 to this, and then put yet another counter on the Smith, so that if they want to save the Wandering Emperor, they have to either chump block or double block if they want to kill the Smith. Alright, they double block, that's fine. I do have Portable Hole in my deck that can get rid of that.
Keep watch for intruders.
Do I want to trade here? I think that's fine. I think we're just going to kill the Luminarch Aspirant. Get a counter. It's a Prosperous Innkeeper. I'm glad they haven't found the time to cast that Legion Angel up until now. So they really haven't been able to threaten my life total all that much. Trying to play this red-white aggro deck from the back foot has not been terribly enjoyable. You get to see the Pithing Needle come down on the Wandering Emperor, which I think is going to be quite strong here. No, I don't want to name cards of my own deck. Thank you very much. Glad they didn't attack that turn. So what are my options? I can smashing for 6, killing these two, and I guess playing an Iron Apprentice. I can play Showdown of the Skalds, Getaway Car, and an Iron Apprentice. That seems worse than smashing for 6. Oh, we need to do the full 12, huh? Alright. Oh, I didn't play land yet. Alright, grow, Iron Apprentice. It's time for you to be great. Should I attack? I kill them in 2 swings. Yeah, I think I should. Wow, Pithing Needle has been great. You know what's been not great? Having these lawn care people right outside the window. Wow, is this hand bad? Alright, this hand's pretty respectable. I know I said I loved Pithing Needle, but do I love it here? Over a second Ingenious Smith? Probably not. I mean, do I love the Goldhound? I think I want to play turn 1 Goldhound. In part because the Goldhound guarantees me a turn 3 Fable of the Mirror Breaker. I mean, it allows me to play a turn 2-1 if I really want to. I think I'm probably not going to really want to do that, but we'll see what happens. More Goldhounds. Pretty nice. Not really, but, you know, I'll say that. I think this turn just has to be Fable and the Mirror Breaker, unless... Does it make sense to just play the Maul and try to go full beatdown? I think if I do that, I'd definitely lose if they have the Wandering Emperor. Okay. I'm going to attack with this and see how they block. I think I would have liked to have had more rip aparts in my sideboard for this matchup and maybe a second needle. I'm not surprised that this is how they're blocking. This is kind of it's a scary attack for them for sure. In terms of what could possibly go wrong. Oh, it's the Iron Apprentice, nice. And a Goldhound, a lowly Goldhound. If I sack both my Goldhounds, I currently have access to Shatterskull Smashing for 5. If I draw a land for the turn, I'll be able to do it for 6, and I think that'll be quite strong. Maybe not even strong enough, though, because this is about to flip, right? I'd still get to kill 2 creatures, but my creatures would then be kind of undersized on the board. I think I need to do it, though. Just hope to find Showdown of the Skalds off the top of my deck, I guess. Well, that makes their creatures pretty big. I think I might need to hold this in my hand just to bluff that I have something to make them not alpha. Because if they alpha, it's kind of bad for me. I'm just straight out dead if they animate a creature land and then alpha. I don't know if both... I don't remember if I was in the player of the draw in game 1 of this match, but it certainly felt like both of these games I lost because they had turn 2 Aspirant. I didn't do anything about it. And they had a Skyclave Apparition that, you know, took out my 3-drop that I also didn't do anything about. Feels like I probably needed to have a little bit more removal in my deck. Especially in the game when I was on the draw. And I think that might just be a sideboard issue that I didn't feel like I had the right removal. I think Rip Apart was probably the right removal for that matchup. That might have also been a match where I mulliganed both times that I lost. I certainly mulliganed in game 3. It would be so nice if there was a land that you could hit off of this in Standard, but there isn't. Or no, is Treasure Vault legal? I guess Treasure Vault might actually be legal. I don't know that it's good, though, is more the problem. There aren't enough things that just reward you for having a ton of artifacts. I did this because I was so worried they would have Deadly Dispute. If I just play the Ingenious Smith. think I'm hoping to draw a land and just be able to play the Getaway Car next turn. If they had wanted to, they could just block with the Automaton and then pay to put the -1/-1 counter on it because they have 2 untapped mana. I don't think I want to just trade my Automaton for their Shambling Ghast here. Does mean that they get to get the treasure, so maybe they're going to do something with 4 mana. Alright, they're an Esper deck, but a different kind of Esper deck. Shambling Ghast doesn't show up all that often in these Esper decks. Getting a little bit thirsty over there. I'm going to start on the Smith. I could bounce the Smith with the Getaway Car. I don't think I want to do that. We'll take a backup Getaway Car, though. We've effectively turned this into crew for 1 mana. Which, that's not great, but that's not awful either. Also, you can, I could crew the Getaway Car with this Iron Apprentice and then sack it to a Voltage Surge to kill some big thing. And, you know, I wouldn't come out ahead there, but it would mitigate the disadvantage of the Getaway Car. Elite Spellbinder. I do not think Elite Spellbinder is a good card. You get too many situations like this where it's just like, I don't really care what card you take. Take any of them. It doesn't matter. They took the Iron Apprentice, so now I can just use the Goldhound to do the same thing with the Getaway Car. They have Deadly Dispute. Okay. If I wanted to do, I could use the Ogre-Head Helm just to spend more mana. I don't think I really want to, though. Alright. They didn't even wait for the Goldhound to get bounced, which maybe they're setting up a Meathook Massacre, and that was a good play. We'll have to see. If they Meathook Massacre me here, it's a pretty big tempo hit. Path of Peril, same difference. And worse than, from their perspective, it's worse than Meathook Massacre. Just play a Getaway Car and do nothing with it. Raffine. That's one of the good ones. Oh. The tempo hits are getting to be a bit much. Need to draw an untapped land next turn. If I draw an untapped land, I think I can get right back in it. They've extracted the truth. Couldn't they edict me? Oh, they can make me sack an enchantment. Okay. Please don't kill my fancy crab hat. This is beginning to look a little bit grim. I'm definitely discarding at least one of these getaway cars, if not potentially both. We'll have to see what I draw for the turn. I don't have any removal spells left in my deck that actually deal with the Raffine now that it's grown. I have to just fight through it somehow with just the board presence. Why did they target the Tenacious Underdog here? They know my hand. They know the thing's going to die. They just went -1 counter for no reason. We're coming in fast with the getaway car. Is it going to work? Should I even play the rabbit battery? The rabbit battery could jump the Tenacious Underdog, but even if they blitz this, attack with both, that's 5. 2 connive triggers, it's 7. They would only go to 1. I think I'm going to save this in case they have a sweeper. They discarded a Meat Hook Massacre at one point earlier, which makes me feel like they could have a sweeper. Did I kill them? I think I killed them. Probably. I guess I don't necessarily kill them through a spell. They only have 1 card in their hand, though. Does the getaway car get away in the end? It does. Wow. Getaway car was looking really bad at one point that game. And then it brought it all the way back. Alright, we want Divine Smites. Especially because they had Shambling Ghast and Eye Twitch, so Divine Smite is just going to be great. I'm going to continue to just board out Rabbit Battery. What else could I board out? Maybe one of the getaway cars. Maybe I think I'm just going to board out one of the Mauls, actually. They had a lot of Fading Hopes in their deck, which really makes Maul look pretty bad. Got a little bit of gold going on. It'd be a really horrible turn 2 to sack my Goldhound, just put into play the Ledger Shredder. I don't think I need to kill the Ledger Shredder here. Ledger Shredder's an interesting addition to this deck. I don't think I've seen other people playing it before. It's certainly a pretty good card. It's just, I think, isn't how people have approached the deck thus far. Well, that went about as well as something could possibly go for me. Right up until the point where I didn't draw my next land. Is it time? Is it time for the Iron Apprentice to go to the skies? Seems pretty reasonable. I'm not that unhappy if they bounce the Iron Apprentice with a Fading Hope. Also really not that unhappy if they play the Wandering Emperor and just kill it here. Certainly not at all unhappy with that. That's like not a great outcome for me, but of the possible times I could play a Meathook Massacre, them playing it to trade one for, you know, kill one of my creatures and one of theirs is about as good as it's ever going to get. Ooh, it's another Goldhound. This card continues to be very unimpressive to me. I will kill it, but I mean, the problem is I just think the body you get is too weak for what it is. Do I want to bounce the Smith or the Goldhound? I guess the Smith can attack, so we will not bounce it. A little bit scary what they might be able to get with these lessons. I guess they could get Mascot Exhibition. Teachings of the Archaics wouldn't be bad here. Hitting them pretty hard. And land is a like perfectly fine draw. If I draw a land, I can just play the Goldhound, equip this, and put the Maul on the Smith, and I'm quite happy with my turn. Land also gets me closer to being able to cast this Showdown, which I think will almost definitely put me over the top in terms of winning the game. I might not even need it. I feel like they should be on a lower life total by now, but I guess they've mostly chump blocked as the game is going on. Time to get in there, Goldhound. Does it make any sense to move the Getaway, or to move them all on the Getaway Car? I don't think so. I guess I'll play this guy. Not really very afraid of a sweeper. If they have a sweeper, it's very likely that they'll just die to the Getaway Car. If they had another meat hook, they could kill everything. Except for the Getaway Car, and they would get up to 3, but then the Getaway Car just kills them. If they had Path of Peril plus another removal spell, maybe they could live. I'm very happy that I cast that Iron Apprentice. I wasn't thinking about them having Silver Quill Command. I think they played it in an earlier game. I'd kind of removed that from my memory, though. Alright, cool. That's kind of how I was envisioning Getaway Car playing out when I put it in my deck. This is a land-heavy hand for sure, but I do have 3 lands that do something, and I also have this Ogre-Head Helm, which is potentially going to get me some more cards at some point. I'm just only showing white and black lands. They've got the Tenacious Underdog, an exceptional card. Fable of the Mirror Breaker is another good reason not to feel like you need to mulligan super aggressively when you're a little bit land heavy, because if you draw one of these, like obviously the extra lands that you have in your hand do something because they just convert into new cards. I got a little bit lucky to draw it, but I think it's a good reason to keep more marginal hands. Just the fact that you can top deck it. I think I'll probably just discard this Sokenzan and keep the extra land that's capable of producing white mana. Scratch that. We'll keep the Sokenzan now that I have even more lands. I guess I can go Smith, attack with this, Fable, all in one turn. That seems reasonable. Ooh, the Iron Apprentice. They never expect the Iron Apprentice. Alright, so they're playing Esper. Like I said at the beginning, I think the Esper's kind of become the clear top deck in the metagame. Should I trade with this thing? Feels like they could definitely be setting up for a Meat Hook Massacre. I'll just trade. Guess I'm ditching 2 lands. What do you got for me? It's a Getaway Car. That is a good one, but I think that is one I will be saving for a later turn. The way they played this game, I'm very suspicious they have a sweeper in their hand. And they do. Glad I got my rabbit battery off of that thing. Or I got my rabbit battery onto something so it could come off later. Discard up to 2 cards. I think I don't need you and you necessarily. I really want to be digging to Showdown on the Skalds. That's kind of my goal in... What's going on here? Get to the Getaway Car. And I'm going to protect the rabbit battery again from a sweeper. And just deal a little bit of extra damage, which is nice. I'm going to sideboard the same way I've been sideboarding here. I'm going to board in 2 Divine Smites, 1 or 2 Circle of Confinement, so no Rabbit Batteries, 1 less Maul, I think is what I did last time. You could have a little bit more removal in your deck if you wanted to, for sure. Maybe another Circle of Confinement over the Ogre-Head Helm. It's a perfectly reasonable hand. They've mulliganed. It would be nice to have a removal spell, certainly in your opening hand. But this is a pretty strong curve out. And as we saw in the game 1, just Fable of the Mirror Breaker produces so much value as the game progresses that it really allows you to catch up with whatever that deck is doing. Please don't whiff. The Maul of the Skyclaves, sure. Wow, that is a really nice exchange for me. And it's kind of a textbook reason that I am not that big of a fan of removal in this format. It's so hard to kill something and actually get a good exchange. I'm going to definitely ditch at least the Automaton, I think. I ditched a Wandering Emperor. I wonder if that's because they didn't have a land or they have another one. I'd really like to find a Divine Smite at some point. I think we're ditching both of these. Planning to play Showdown. I want to play Showdown this turn. Excuse me. I also want to have access to a kicked Voltage Surge in case they Meat Hook Massacre. I'm going to start out by attacking. Wouldn't be surprised to see the Wandering Emperor here, which I'll probably play Voltage Surge to finish that off.
I've learned much during my travels. Let me show you. We must protect the people.
There's also that. That's a pretty fortuitous set of cards.
I guess that's that.
There was maybe a better way to sequence my cards that turn. Like, I'm going to miss out on one of these land drops, which really isn't the biggest deal. I think had I played differently, though, they might not have used the Wandering Emperor the way they did, and that worked out really well for me. Also, finding Divine Smite worked out incredibly well. It's just sheer genius to put it in my deck. Respectable hand. I don't have any of my top end, so I'll be needing to draw into some of that, but I have a pretty reasonable curve. I have a Goldhound and an Iron Apprentice, which, as we know, are both all-stars. Not the best of the 3 or 4 mana cards I could draw, but it is at least a 3 or 4 mana card, so it is going to fit into my curve nicely. Come on, play a Luminarch Aspirant. Something I can Voltage Surge. Hey, it worked. Luminarch Aspirant would be a nice card to be able to include in this deck, and maybe you could try to fit it. I think you're going to wind up a little bit short on artifacts. If you cut artifacts to put it in, which is really going to hurt the Ingenious Smith and Patchwork Automatons. Might be worth it anyway. You wouldn't necessarily have to play 4 even if that's what you wanted to do. Like you could, you know, cut Ogre-Head Helm, maybe Rabbit Battery and play 2 of them if that's something you really wanted to try. Wow. I was starting to think it might have been a mistake to use the Voltage Surge on the Aspirant because I was worried my Portable Hull was going to wind up not having a target. Thankfully that is not the case. I think I want to get this on a creature just in case they have... I guess they could play Depopulate next turn. I'm beginning to sense that the top card of my deck is Showdown of the Skalds. I think that that would be very nice if it were the case. It is not the case. It's not a bad one, though. So... I can move the Rabbit Battery onto the Iron Apprentice. Doesn't really speed up my clock, probably, though. So I think I'm just going to leave it. Having a 2-power first striker means that the cats aren't going to be able to attack if they have a... Yeah, if they play a 4 or 5 mana card that can crew the Chariot on its own. It would be exposed to the cats if I move the Rabbit Battery. I'll have the option here of just double blocking the Chariot. I don't think I want to do that. Especially if they have their mana untapped, I'm just kind of walking into the Wandering Emperor at that point. Also, I think the way I'm going to win this game is not by kind of grinding through their resources, it's just by killing them in the air. Chariot has been a scary card for this deck. Alright, they've got something in the air now. It's not even going to be that good of a blocker. It is going to... So, they are going to be able to copy it with the Chariot, though. So I think I need to get the Chariot off the board, which I was hoping not to have to do. So I'm going to double block it here. It's nice that they're tapped out so that they probably aren't going to be able to do anything about this. I mean, I guess they could have, like, slip out back and play it on one of my creatures here. Or, you know, the 1-mana instant that makes a shield, maybe? I'm expecting that this is just going to work, though. And that one I'm definitely discarding. That was not what I was hoping to see. Do have a 4-power first striking flyer, though. I think they should maybe just... Well, maybe they shouldn't take it. I don't know. They're kind of a bind either way. If they have the Wandering Emperor in their hand, I think they're going to win. If they don't, I think they're going to be sad. They have Yasharn, the Implacable Earth. There's no placable in it. It is implacable. Not even sure that I realized that was going to work that way. It's pretty nice, though. Obviously, this card should have attacked. So if I was at 12, I would be forced to block one of the cat tokens. Alright, that's not good for me. It's really not good for me. How can I win? I can win if I top deck any of my removal spells. They all get this thing out of the way. Oh, but they have a high enough leg total now that I don't kill them. It's going to be a rough one. I don't think it's a winnable game anymore. Am I just dead? No, I'm not dead, which probably means they may not even be able to attack. Let's see what their idea is, though. Problem is, if they have any spells in their hand, it's really doomed. I guess what could happen is they attack like this, and they don't have anything, so the rabbit battery just eats the flyer. And then I top deck my other Maul, and they die. Not sure what the logic was in leaving one cat back. Come on, other Maul. Nothing. I'll take nothing. Yeah, like now they don't even have lethal for this turn. I would definitely have lost this game if my opponent had gotten all the damage they should have out of their attacks. Is it possible I could have killed them somehow? I didn't think about that. I don't think so. This turn it makes a little bit more sense not to attack with this because it's not lethal and it will be lethal next turn. Like it's not clear that there's a difference between me being at 3 life and at 1 life. The Getaway Car might kill them if I draw a removal spell. I don't think either of these other cards really does much. This kills them if they've got nothing. Seems likely they've got nothing. It seems like I would have already died if they had anything. I got away with one there for sure. So they were probably just straight green-white with maybe some blue, like, sideboard cards that aren't going to be relevant against me, would be my guess. They might have, like, Disdainful Stroke in their sideboard. Definitely want Rip Apart. I think I definitely want Pithing Needle because it can hit Chariot and it can hit the Wandering Emperor, which seems like it's guaranteed to be in their deck. I'm not sure about Burning Hands. And Burning Hands, it can hit Sharn and Workshop Warchief. Those are not cards I really care that much about being able to hit. Asika's Chariot, it can hit, but that's a bad exchange. I mean, I guess I should still have it. It can also kill a Luminarch Aspirant before it gets off the ground. Again, I wish I had more Rip-Aparts and Pithing Needles for this matchup, I think. Probably the Getaway Car is not at its strongest against Asika's Chariot. Maybe the Rabbit Battery is also weak. I want one portable hole. It's good against tokens some of the time. Seems okay. Not the strongest hand in the world, but it's another one of these hands where if I draw a Fable of the Mirror Breaker or Showdown of the Skalds in my first 3 or 4 draw steps, it's going to turn into a really good hand. Ingenious Smith would also be a solid draw. All the Skyclaves would be fine. It's really just going to come down to, do I draw a high impact card to play by turn 4? I'm choosing to be optimistic. Plains is not that high impact of a card. It does mean that the Eiganjo is probably going to be used as a spell at this point, or as a, for its effect, rather than as a land. Certainly land is not the way I wanted to start this. I'm sensing this could be a Fables of the Mirror Breaker, though, and that would be great. Land. Really not what I was hoping for. Might be an okay shape still if their turn is, if the Chariot attacks and it's just making a cat, like maybe that's a recoverable board state. If they play the Ran or Starnheim Unleashed and they're making it 4/4 or bigger, it's going to be really grim. Alright, that one's not the worst. Does mean they get to attack with their cats. If I were them, I think I would have crewed and attacked with everything, but this opponent is a much more passive player than I would be. Not sure it actually served them well to have not attacked there. Like they're down a cat. They've dealt the same amount of damage. They just have one less cat, basically, is what's happened. Probably still in great shape to win. Maybe not. The fact that they put their counter there is pretty good for me. The fact that they're not attacking with the cats, I'm not sure what that's all about. Still in not great shape here, I would say. If the top card of my deck is one of my expensive cards, it could turn out well, though. We're also in the range where they might just start playing Myria's Calls, and I'm not going to beat that. Come on, Showdown and the Skalds off the top of my deck. Plains off the top of my deck. I'm going to continue to hold this Plains both the bluff and in case I draw a Fable of the Mirror Breaker. It's a little bit awkward if I draw a Showdown on the Skalds. Yeah, and that's not good for me. I can't. There's no way I can come back from this, right? So getting a 4/4. Like I was planning on trading the Bugbear and an Iron Apprentice for sure. Guess I'll still play another turn. But that is a lot of Flying Angels. So like I said, when I kept this hand, I was banking on top decking a high impact card to play for turn 4, and I really just didn't draw a high impact card the entire game. I drew a couple of spells that were castable, but that was about it. This is too little too late, I would assume. Certainly. Still reasonably happy with how I've sideboarded given my sideboard. I think after this match I'm going to maybe make 1 or 2 tweaks to the sideboard. Sounds a little bit light on land, but I've got the spells that I wish I'd drawn last game. I really only need a 3rd land to have it really get going. I'm going to pay life here. Just have access to Burning Hands in case they play Luminarch Aspirant. The upside being that if I get to Burning Hands, the Aspirant, and the top card of my deck is an untapped land, and I get to play Fable of the Mirror Breaker, it's really huge. And the downside is I lose 3 life, which maybe that matters. Maybe it doesn't even, though. I think in the games where I don't draw a land next turn, the 3 life is not even going to matter a lot of the time because I'm just going to get run over since I can't even play my hand. Come on, untap land, tap land. Could be worse. It's not a disaster, but it could have been so much better. All right. This is a card that might be a good sideboard card in my deck. That or Arcana of Maria. These cards, like both this and Arcana of Maria, they're pretty good. They just wind up not ever feeling like they're quite good enough that I'm excited to play them, and that's maybe a mistake on my part. My opponent, yet again, did not attack with a Vigilance creature. I'm not a fan of that strategy on their part. feel like I'm probably going to get overpowered this game. And it's all going to come down to the fact that I couldn't play a Fable of the Mirror Breaker on turn 3. If their hand's weak, maybe I won't. There's also just the chance that for whatever reason they just don't attack me very aggressively. And they wind up in a spot where the Reflection of Kiki Jiki does something. I'm going to double block here with the goblins. It certainly feels like they could easily just have another chariot in their hand, in which case it's not going to be good for me, but just about anything that they have that could cost 4 or 5 mana is not going to be good for me here. Certainly this counts as not good for me.
Like what? I have got new moves to teach you.
I'm going to play the Goldhound to get the trigger on the Smith. I'm going to hold this Den of the Bugbear to pitch next turn to the Kiki Jiki that's about to go to Chapter 2. So far this game they've missed 4 damage by not attacking with their Vigilance creature. Which 4 is a large amount of damage to have missed. Is that a Starnheim Unleashed? It's not going to be a beatable card for me.
Let your blade do the talking.
Not sure I get the logic of this attack, but I think blocking is fine. Alright, they've discovered the creature has vigilance. Things are not looking up. I want to play another Fable of the Mirror Breaker this turn, or do I need a better card? I think I might need a better card. Yeah. Showdown, which I can't cast. I guess I can cast it if I crack the Goldhound. Yeah, I think we need something good to happen. Come on, something good. I'm going to save my mana to be able to use the Reflection of Kiki Jiki. I don't think that's going to be good enough, but I think it's better than just throwing the Iron Apprentice out there. Yeah, sadly that's Starnheim Unleashed, and my deck is not capable of beating this kind of a board. Once they have a couple of gigantic flyers, it's over. I never got on the front foot in this game because I turned 3 stunk, and then they had a Chariot. Chariot is such a messed up Magic card. It's not even like Pithing Needle type stuff would help against the Chariot. It doesn't really solve the problem though. Can I afford to take 2? So I'm going to 10. I think it's just straight up impossible to win this game. Is there a difference between being at 10 and being at 12? I don't think so. I guess 10 or 8. Maybe there was a difference between 10 and 8. Doesn't matter though, right? Because I can get one of the flyers off the board. One of the flyers off the board is not enough. I could Kiki-Jiki my Ogre-Head Helm and maybe they don't block it and get more cards. I think they would see the line and block it. Alright, I'm dead. Alright, so back to looking at the deck. So what did we learn? I went 3-0 against Esper variants, which I think those were the matches where I had some of the stronger draws out of this deck. But it was also kind of impressive that the deck was able to go 3-0 against what's potentially the top deck. So I think I don't know that I need to change anything to make the deck better against Esper. That seemed strong. The problem was I lost twice to kind of white-green, mid-range, tokeny kind of decks. And like I said while I was going through the matches, I think I realized that Rip Apart and Pithing Needle were the sideboard cards I wanted. And I had some stuff that really didn't line up particularly well there. I think for now, I would say I'll cut a Burning Hands and a Portable Hole and add another Rip Apart and another Pithing Needle. Pithing Needle was actually kind of impressive, just because for 1 mana, like 1 mana to shut off the Wandering Emperor was a really big deal, and I think 1 mana to shut off a lot of, like, you know, half of a Chariot is actually going to be worth it in games where you're resolving Showdown the Skalds or you get Fable of the Mirror Breaker going. So in both of those cases, that seemed pretty nice. It's possible you could do a search and maybe find something that helps you a little bit more against tokens. Be a little bit surprised if something like that exists. Other than that, this deck, for a first attempt, it was, I think there's some potential here. It showed itself a little bit stronger than I thought. I'm not really sure what the conclusion is between the Getaway Car and the Maul of the Skyclaves. They were both good at various points. Maul maybe had a few more good points, but the Getaway Car also, when it got to do its thing, it was actually pretty strong. I think very obviously Fable of the Mirror Breaker and Showdown on the Skalds are the really good payoffs at 3 and 4 mana. And then the 2-drops, they were fine. Maybe you could find a non-artifact based deck like this, where you're not playing the artifact stuff, you just kind of play only the good cards. I think that might actually be a little bit less promising, just because you're not going to have Voltage Surge as like a really strong removal spell, because you're not going to have artifacts to sack to it, or you're not going to have enough. Also, I think you'll discover that the 1-drops that you can play with really aren't stronger than these 1-drops. Like, you'd be looking at stuff like Usher of the Fallen, which really just isn't a strong enough card, I think. And Luminarch Aspirant would certainly be a very strong card, but I think whatever your second best 2-drop is outside of the artifact-based theme is not actually going to be a very good card either. So I don't know that there's actually a reason to move off of this kind of artifact-based stuff. Also, if you wind up moving off of the artifact-based stuff, I think Pithing Needle becomes a lot less appealing, because you're never getting it for free off the Ingenious Smith, and you're never using it to kind of trigger your synergies. So that's the deck. Hope you guys found that interesting. And if you're looking for an aggressive deck, I think that this might be an area that you'd want to continue to explore. So thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.